Hi, I'm Erin Spain and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I made this DIY coffee table with clover or quatrefoil shaped cutouts and cane webbing. I'll be sure to link to the written tutorial on my blog as well as everything I used in the description box below. And if you have any questions, please leave those for me in the comment section. If you haven't already, I'd love it if you would subscribe and click the bell icon so you can be notified of my future videos. Thank you so much for watching. Let's build. First, I measured and cut a 1x6 board into 3 pieces, each at 17¼ inches long. These will be the sides and the middle cubby divider for the table. I always like to clamp a board or a speed square down to use as a guide to ensure straight cuts with my circular saw. Next, I sanded the boards and set one of them aside. Then I measured and marked the center point on each of my remaining 2 boards. These are going to be the sides, and I'm going to cut 3 quatrefoil or clover shapes into each one. After I marked my center point, I cut out my template. You can find a free download of the printable version of this template on my website, which I'll link to in the description box below. I placed the template in the center of each board and traced it with my pencil, and then I measured and marked the center point between each side of the shape and the outer edge of the board. I centered the template on each of those marks and I traced it 2 more times per board. To cut out the shapes, I clamped down the board and then I drilled a large hole in the center of the shape. The hole needed to be big enough for my jigsaw blade to fit, so I used my jigsaw with a scroll blade attached to cut out the shape. I found the easiest way to do this was to cut small chunks rather than trying to cut out the entire shape in one pass. I also found that going slow was crucial. I repeated this process until all of the shapes had been cut out. And here's what you should end up with, 3 shapes in each board. I used a sanding attachment on my Dremel Micro to smooth out the inside and the edges of my quatrefoil or clover shapes. You could hand sand them, but this was much quicker. After I cut out the shapes, I cut down 2 17¼ inch wide project panels to 3 feet long each. These will end up being the top and the bottom of the table, and you can buy these pre-made laminated project boards at Home Depot, or you can laminate your own with wood glue, clamps, and 1x lumber. In order to attach the sides and the middle divider to the top of the table, I needed to drill pocket holes into one side of them. I used my pocket hole jig to drill a total of 4 holes in each of the side boards and 6 holes in the middle divider. I attached them with 1¼ inch long pocket hole screws using the long driver bit that came with my pocket hole jig. We're working upside down, so eventually this will be flipped over and become the top piece of the table. And here are where the pocket holes were located. We'll screw on the bottom piece from underneath later. After I attached the sides to the top piece of the table, it was time to build the base. I cut 2 pieces of 2x2 at 3 feet long each and 2 pieces at 14 3/8 inches long each. I'll be sure to list all the dimensions and everything I used in the description box below. These pieces will form a frame to attach to the bottom of the table. I made sure to sand everything smooth with my orbital sander before putting it all together. Next, I readjusted my pocket hole jig to accommodate 2x lumber. You can adjust the jig and the collar on the drill bit according to the thickness of the wood you're working with. Then I drilled a single pocket hole at each end of the smaller pieces of 2x2. I attached the shorter pieces to the 3-foot long pieces using 2-inch long pocket hole screws, forming a large rectangular frame. For the remainder of the base, I cut 2 more pieces of 2x2 at 14 3/8 inches long and 4 pieces at 10½ inches long each. I drilled a pocket hole at each end of both of the longer pieces and at one end of each of the 4 shorter pieces. This is what your pieces should look like once you get all the pocket holes drilled. Then I sanded everything with my orbital sander. I attached 2 of the shorter pieces of 2x2 to each of the longer pieces using 2-inch long pocket hole screws, and I formed 2 C-shaped pieces to attach to the base frame I built earlier. I screwed the C-shaped pieces on using 2-inch pocket hole screws, and at this point the frame is just resting on the project panel, which will become the bottom of the table, but now I needed to attach it. So I used a countersinking drill bit to pre-drill holes around the perimeter of the frame, and then I attached it to the table bottom. Remember, we're working upside down here, so this will be the bottom when we flip it over later, using 1.5-inch wood screws. And if you aren't countersinking them, you'll need longer screws. I used my rigid compact router with a 1/4-inch roundover bit to subtly round over the top edge of my table. This bit came with the router, and you can find out more about this tool on my website. I realized the middle divider piece was in the way when my router got caught on it, so I temporarily removed it until I finished routing the edges. I made a couple of passes on each side, and then I lightly hand sanded it with a sheet of sandpaper afterwards. I went around and used wood filler and a putty knife to patch over any nicks or little holes or wood knots to prevent bleed through later, since I was going to paint over it. Then when it dried, I sanded it smooth. Before painting, I primed everything with Kil's stain blocking primer. Initially, I painted the table teal, but I didn't really love the way that looked with the cane webbing I planned to use, so I scrapped that idea and I went with black. Now this table is for our playroom, which I'm currently making over, so I'll probably end up using the teal somewhere else in the room. I sealed it with a water-based polyacrylic top coat. I decided I really wanted to layer the cane webbing in front of a black background, and plus I didn't love the way all the raw edges looked if I just attached it without anything behind it. So I opted for 1/4-inch plywood, which I cut down to the size of each side of the table, and then I painted it black. But before I painted it, I lightly sanded the edges with a sanding block. I purchased a roll of this cane webbing on Amazon, and I'll leave a link in the description box below. I cut the cane webbing to fit the 1/4-inch plywood panels, leaving about a 1/4 inch of space on each end. I sandwiched the cane webbing between the clover-shaped sides of the table and the thin plywood panels, and then I used a brad nailer with 1/2-inch long brad nails to attach everything. Finally, to attach the top of the table to the base, I pre-drilled holes using my countersinking drill bit, and then I drilled from underneath using 2.5-inch wood screws. I added 2 on each side, and that was enough to create a strong enough hold. And now enjoy some outtakes. If you haven't already, I would love it. Don't mind me, I'm just fixing my microphone. A nail in the wall behind me. Okay, let's hide it with my head. In the description box below. Didn't make sense at all. It's like a vein popping out my forehead. Nope. And also, yeah, nope, forgot what I was gonna say. Winning. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you would give it a thumbs up. I'll be back next Thursday with a brand new video, and in the meantime, you can find me online at ErinSpain.com and on social media at ErinSpainBlog.